Good evening. All right, we are in the study of, there we go. Good evening. We are in a study of Proverbs. And we've been looking at the section, the major section dealing with work. We've looked at it from the subsection of diligence in our work and our business. We're now in the midst of looking at this subsection on laziness. And then, of course, we'll talk about honesty in work and dependability, and that'll wrap up this major section. Well, obviously won't finish that tonight, but that's where we're going. Before I pick up where I left off last week, which we left off, if you want to go and be turning to Proverbs 21, that's our next chapter we'll be looking at. We had a question last week that I promised I would research, and I'll try to condense this because you kind of piqued my interest. I really enjoy word studies. I'm not an expert in Greek or Hebrew by any stretch, but we are, what a time to be alive as far as a student of the Bible, because there are so many tools available out there where you can look up something very easily. And so, but the question was pertaining to when the Bible talks about laziness, is it, or at least in Proverbs, is it, and I did, by the way, limit my study here just to Proverbs as far as answering this question. Is it more laziness in general, like how the quality of a work, the quality of a job versus not working at all? I sort of suspected maybe it might indicate both, and I think that's kind of the shortest version is that, yeah, it basically is both. There is a verse, let me find it, 18, I think, 18 verse 9 that says, "He also that is slothful in his work is brother to him that is a great waster." We covered that either last week or the week before. So there's one where it specifically says it's dealing with the quality of work. So here's somebody that he's working, he's doing something, but he's not doing a quality job. So sometimes I think it's like a lot of things, it's going to be context, and it's, again, I don't claim any kind of expertise in Hebrew at all, but one of the things that I've noticed is I look up words from time to time in the Hebrew is, and you see it sometimes with Greek words, but it seems to me it's more so, it seems to me, not a scholar, but from my limited experience, it does seem that Hebrew words a lot of times are a lot more flexible. And I think you'll see that at least in some part with this. But there's one Hebrew word that is used, Hebrew words are pronounced very differently, but it looks to me in the English transliteration something like atzel. Strong's defines it as indolent, slothful, sluggard. And that's how the King James translates it, either as sluggard or slothful. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 times, and about as many verses, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think it's used twice in any of these. So 14 times and 14 verses. I meant to count that up and put that in my notes so I'd know it. But and it's always translated either sluggard or slothful. You see that, such as Proverbs 6, "Go to the ant, thou sluggard." Proverbs 6, verse 6. One of the ones that we'll talk about when we get to dependability in work. It's Proverbs 10:26. "As vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes, so is the sluggard to them that send him. The soul of the sluggard desireth and hath nothing." Proverbs 13:4. But then you got like 15:19, "Slothful, the way of the slothful man is as an hedge of thorns. Slothful man hides his hand in his bosom." 19:24. "The desire of the slothful killeth him." 21:25. Slothful man says, there is a lion without, I shall be slain in the streets. We'll cover that one in just a moment. Proverbs 22:13. Went by the field of the slothful, 24:30. And then 26:13 through 16, 13, 14, 15, 16. 4 verses back to back to back to back. That word is used. And for some unknown reason, the King James, it's translated slothful, 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 and then sluggard in verse 16. I don't know. Sometimes the King James does that. They're very similar words. Maybe they just decided to mix it up a little bit. But I was looking, what did I say, 26, I think, in the ESV. I think it gets it, what did I say, 13 through 16? I think it's sluggard every time there, 13, 14, 15, 16. Yeah, they do the same thing. New King James has it lazy man every single time, but it's the same word in the Hebrew. Get back to 21 here. So that's one word, but again, from that, it's just kind of the idea of laziness, so I don't know that you can say much more than that. There's another word, it looks like Ramayah, something like that. Strong's defines it as remissness, treachery, deceit, deceitful, deceitfully, false, guile, idle. And there's where it gets into slothfulness, laziness. Idle, slack, slothful. The King James translates this word, again, I'm just dealing with the book of Proverbs because that deceitful or treachery or something like that, you might find that in other places in the Old Testament. But in Proverbs, when this word is used, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 verses, 4 times in 4 verses. Proverbs 10:4, he becometh poor that dealeth with a slack hand. Dealing with a slack hand. So that could be just laziness, not doing work, or that could be doing work but not doing a good job of it. So I think that could carry either definition or either meaning. Proverbs 12:24 is rendered slothful. Hand of the diligent shall bear rule, but the slothful shall be under tribute. 12:27, slothful man roasteth not that which he took in hunting. I think we talked about that last week or maybe the week before. And then 19:15, it's actually, the verse starts off with slothfulness, but it's a different Hebrew word, but it's like the feminine form of that first word that we were looking at just a moment ago. Slothfulness casteth into a deep sleep, and an idle soul shall suffer hunger. Idle there is this other Hebrew word that we're seeing 4 times in 4 verses. So idle, and that would be the idea of slothful or lazy, sluggard. And then one more word that it looks like something as we would pronounce it, I suppose, rapha, something like that. Strong's defines it, and you want to talk about a flexible word. Strong's defines this one. It says a primitive root. Here are the definitions given: to slacken, in many applications, literal or figurative; abate, cease, consume; draw, or to draw toward evening; to fail, be faint, be or wax feeble; forsake, idle; leave, let alone; slack, stay, be still, be slothful; be weak, be weakened. See how 45 times, or at least 45 verses popped up in the search. But just looking in the book of Proverbs, 1, 2, 3, 3 times in the book of Proverbs. 4:13, take fast hold of instruction. Let her not go. Keep her, for she is thy life. Let her not go is that one Hebrew word. So you can see where this is a pretty flexible word. And then 18:9 is where we'll recognize it from. He also that is slothful in his work is brother to him that is a great waster. And there's that word. 24:10, it's rendered as faint. If thou faint in the day of adversity, thy strength is small. So sometimes you see words, and you see this sometimes in Greek, but again, in my limited experience, it seems like I see it more with Hebrew words where sometimes you go, wow, that's the same word. But we do that in English, don't we? Sometimes we have words that can mean very different things. Cool. There's a lot of a lot of meaning to that, and some of those meanings are very different. And if somebody just walked into our culture having no knowledge of that, and they know that strictly speaking, cool means like something that is cool to the touch or whatever, and you say, man, that's really cool. And they're like, what? So we do that in English as well. But that was an interesting study, and I wanted to mention just to answer that question. Again, short version is, it appears from all I can tell that as it's used in Proverbs, slothfulness, sluggard, idle, slack, whatever rendering of the various Hebrew words, depending on context, it may mean just somebody who doesn't want to work, period. Might mean somebody who, they might be working, but they're trying to do far less than their best. They're not doing a quality job. Okay, so anything else on that? Let's go to chapter 21. '21, 25, and 26 here. All right, King James has it as, the desire of the slothful killeth him, for his hands refuse to labor. He coveteth greedily all the day long, but the righteous giveth and spareth not. This is kind of interesting, and some of it goes back to what we were talking about last week, because here is, well, let me cover 25 first, and then we'll get to the kind of interesting part, because that's really in verse 26. The desire of the slothful killeth him, or the desire of the sluggard kills him, is the way the ESV puts it. What is New King James got? Lazy man? Yeah. For his hands refuse to labor. We often use that phrase, killing himself, killing oneself, to mean somebody that's overworking, right? We sometimes say that. You're killing yourself. You're working too much. You're doing too much. Or we sometimes say, he needs to take a day off. He's killing himself. That's how a lot of times we use that, not always, but it's interesting because here the idea is associated with slothfulness. The lazy man, he ends up depending on others to survive because his hands refuse to labor. And his desire will kill him. If nobody's going to help him, his desire will kill him, because his laziness is going to preclude him from working and supporting himself. So as mentioned last week, a lot of times he ends up living off the state or something like that. But where this takes an interesting turn to me is in verse 26, because he coveteth greedily all the day long, or all day long he craves and craves. But the righteous gives and does not hold back. The righteous giveth and spareth not. This is, and I say it's interesting because it's commending charity right after describing a man who is 100% undeserving of charity. Here's a guy who's lazy and his desire is just eating him up. He's dependent on others to survive, but then it commends the righteous who gives. Does any hard-working person, diligent person, want to give without holding back to a lazy man, to a covetous type person? Covetous in the sense of they kind of give me, but they're not working. Why would anybody do that? And so I think there is a balance here, and I say this a lot because it's so true. We tend as humans toward extremes. And one extreme is somebody says, I'm in need. I need some help. And you just blindly, without any thought, just, sure, here. Whether it be money, other kind of assistance. But the other extreme is almost to the point, sometimes to the point of, I'm just not going to help, period. Anybody. And even to the point of being jaded, suspicious of everybody. Well, as so often is the case, the biblical answer lies somewhere in the middle. Should we do our due diligence, as we say? Absolutely. But I still say, having done that, and listen, there are times when we've done that, whether it be individually, as a family, as a congregation. We could get Blake up here just to teach this part. You know what I'm talking about. But there are times when you do that due diligence and you go, okay, this is not somebody genuinely in need. They're trying to take advantage. But then there are times when you say, well, I don't know. I mean, it seems okay. I mean, I can't really find anything. There's no just red flags that are making me go, I don't think this is bad. Well, then what? And I always say, in those situations, I would rather err on the side of helping. I would rather stand before my God one day and have him say, that person you gave $20 to, or that person you paid their bill, or did this or did that, they scammed you, but bless you, my child, for you tried. You did that in all good conscience. You did what you could to try to make sure you didn't know, but you erred on the side of generosity. And bless you for that. I'd rather have that than to stand before my God one day and have him say, that person that you just assumed was lying, was lazy, was a bum. He wasn't. He was genuinely in need. And you just send him away. I don't think it's hard to figure out which side of that we'd rather be on as a child of God. Don't go to the one extreme and just say, oh, well, Chad thinks we should give everybody whatever they ask for. No. But don't go to that other extreme either and say, well, I'm not giving anybody anything because, they must be lazy. They must be a bum. They must, whatever. Do your due diligence, but at the end of the day, there is a blessing here. Even somebody who's wholly unworthy of that charity says, here's a person who is righteous and he gives and does not hold back. So why not err on the side of helping when we can? If you see something that mitigates against that, then by all means. We need to encourage people to do the right thing, and we need to encourage people to be diligent and to be workers and so on. In fact, that was the thought we kind of ended class with last week, was that Paul's very clear about this in 2 Thessalonians chapter 3. If any wouldn't work, neither should he eat. So if I'm not willing to work, somebody might say, well, I'm so hungry. You know what? If I'm being lazy and I go hungry, isn't that a good thing? Because I don't know if I have it on this sheet. It might be on one of the other sheets. I didn't print out all of my notes. But I was trying to think of I think it's under the verses for diligence. But the verse we talked about a few weeks back where it says, essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but it essentially says, even a lazy man will work, if nothing else, because he's hungry enough. That hunger will drive him to work. Sometimes that can be a good thing. And so if I'm not going to work, it might do me good to go hungry a little bit to motivate me to get out there and work. But sometimes we are genuinely in need, and sometimes others are genuinely in need. So again, do your due diligence, but at the end of the day, there's a blessing when we do help others in situations like that. So Proverbs 22:13. Is there not anything else on that one? This is one of those that I feel like it's just a weird sneaking feeling that we covered this before, but it's not. It shouldn't be one that we've covered before. Maybe I'm just thinking back. It's in my mind from putting my notes together. I don't know. The slothful man saith, did I say verse 13? The slothful man saith, there is a lion without, and I shall be slain in the streets. So there's a lion outside. I'll be slain in the streets. Did we cover this already? I thought we did. Did we? It might have been under diligence. Maybe that's what, I don't know. I just got that weird, like, I'm feeling like I'm repeating myself. But anyway, here is another very strong exaggeration, hyperbole, we sometimes call it. It's just a fancy way of saying exaggeration. And it's a strong picture. But this time it's kind of a humorous picture to describe this lazy man. Well, Chad, why aren't you going to work today? You just going to stay at home? Well, yeah, it's dangerous out there. There could be a lion in the streets, and so I better just stay home today. That's ridiculous. So it's kind of a humorous illustration to demonstrate just how far this lazy man will go to try to justify his laziness and to try to keep from working. And isn't that still true today? I mean, it may not be this exact type thing, but sometimes you'll see, and again, working with churches through the years, sometimes you see this, somebody that I literally find myself sometimes thinking, you would probably work less if you just go, like you could go to McDonald's or Walmart or somewhere like that and even get a minimum wage job, have some steady income there, and work less than what they're doing trying to go from place to place and just beg and beg and beg. And again, I know we all need help from time to time, but there's a difference between needing help and just not wanting to work. So here's a lazy man. He just, there's a lion outside. A lot of danger out there. Somebody might say, well, cars are dangerous, and I'd have to drive to work. It's too far to walk, so I better just stay home today. I mentioned this, I don't know, it's been several years ago, but I ran across, it was told, I think it's coming from Mark Twain, but Mark Twain is about second only to Abraham Lincoln for quotes that are attributed to him. A lot of times you run across, it's amazing how many times I've run across something attributed to Abraham Lincoln only to find out later it was not, or Mark Twain only to find out later it was not. So bear that in mind. I meant to do my best to sort of fact check the source on this, but who knows? It's one of those stories that could have come from anywhere, I suppose. But it said there was a fellow that went to his neighbor and asked if he could borrow his axe. And the neighbor said, no, I'm really sorry. You can't. I'm having soup for supper tonight. And he's, what? You're having soup for supper tonight? That's right. And so I can't borrow your axe because you're having soup for supper tonight. That's right. What has that got to do with you having soup for supper? You don't need an axe to eat soup. He says, I know, but when you don't want to do something, one excuse is just as good as another. When you don't want to work, one excuse is just as good as another. You could say, I'm lazy, I don't want to do it. Or you could come up with something crazy like, well, it's dangerous out there. I better just stay home because might get hurt, might get killed. People don't want to do something, I'll come up with some reason, excuse, if we don't want to work, we're just being lazy. So, very, very powerful illustration there. Again, I think there's meant to be some humor in that. And you'll see this again, down in chapter 26. But first, if nothing else,